Good morning, my friends, and happy Thor's Day to you. I hope that this week has gone according to your plans and that you've been able to obtain the energy that you've needed to heal up here. Of course, our mental space. Today, as always, we discuss the strength of Thor, for he was a very powerful, both physically and mentally, Norse god. And we really see him being recognized originally from the tribes further south, the Germanic tribes of my ancestry, of course, the Danes. Today, as always, I want to thank you all for joining me, for being here, for listening, and hopefully passing on these words that others may come to know their and heal their mental space as well. For those of you who have liked, followed, and subscribed, thank you so much. For those of you who haven't, please help us to distribute this message even further by clicking the button to like, follow, and subscribe us here on Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, and of course, as always, New Reality TV. Newrealitytv.com is a wonderful new streaming channel with dedicated shows to helping us find a different spiritual perspective that hopefully will provide you with the intellect that you need to find your better mental space. For those of you who haven't, I also would like to encourage you, if you have a few extra coins jingling around in your purse or your pocket, by all means, drop them in the tip jar. Every little bit helps to go towards our mission of spreading this word of a better mental health and more harmony amongst all peoples. For those of you who may need individual at which to bend an ear and just listen and have a dialogue and open a conversation, you're welcome to check out my website, NorseWhispers.com. There you'll find all the information about me, my shows, my message, my teachings, and of course, a place where you can actually go make an appointment and let's start a dialogue where we can have a communication about helping you to discover your better mental space. Well, thank you so much for joining us this morning. For those of you who have it, Facebook live chat is available for you to pose your questions and certainly put up those answers or those comments and questions. As always, I'm open to all peoples joining me, regardless of your religious affiliation. Many times we speak every day about the Norse gods, and we say they they certainly are for me, they are my recognition of a deity, for many others as well. But they're not the only interpretation. Many people say, oh, well, you have to be this, therefore, if you're any different, then you're wrong, or you're different, or you're not right. You need to come and do this. And that's not our spiritual path. Our spiritual path is not to dictate the spiritual path of another. We are simply here to provide our experiences that others may learn from. Whether we find comfort in one God, in the monotheistic rule, or whether we find comfort and understanding in a multiple gods, in a multiple perspectives. And it's okay, both of those systems. There may be even a case where you don't see the difference between the spiritual entities around us and a deity. And that's okay. That's your spiritual path. And no one has the right to dictate your spiritual path. Our spiritual path is as unique as we are. The Creator above is a little smarter than we give them credit for they laid out these plans for us to evolve and change over time, and certainly to recognize when we were ready to recognize different, certainly a different level of deity interaction. So many people say, well, you're a Norse pagan, therefore you have to be this, and you have to shun all these other spiritual understandings. And that's not right. That's not for me to decide. You have your own path, and your decision to follow your deity, your understanding, your teachings, your gifts from these deities is completely up to you. Whether you're strong in that belief, or maybe you're like many who are kind of just can't find a way, that's okay. Believe it or not, that's completely acceptable. Many of us will go through these spiritual paths in our lives where we'll be offered different views. We'll see it different ways, right? Monday, we may wake up in the morning and say, let me get my bearings straight. Oh, I think there's one deity today. And that's fine. Speak to that deity, interact with that deity, interact with our ancestors. Our ancestors, of course, will teach us the way forward. For now, they are not bounded by fear. You have to remember that many of particularly the modern day religions, have 2,000 plus years of fear of this conform or die kind of mentality. So they're a little reticent to just jump out there and be something different. And that's understandable. But once the ancestors ascend away from the physical plane and they're into the spiritual realm, that fear is now removed, right? So now they can speak really what's on their mind. We always talk about living inauthentically, and this conform or die mentality that has been placed on humankind for 2,000 plus years. The conform or die kind of pushed many people out of their authentic self. Maybe they had, as communities and as a culture, they had interactivity with certain deities, with certain understandings, and they believed that, and that worked for them. They felt comfortable there. They felt at home there. And then along came this other practice that said, you will conform to our way of doing things, or you will perish. You will be eradicated from physical existence. And so many people said, oh, you know what? I want to live, so therefore I'll play by your rules for now. And what that created was this inauthentic life that I had to lead. for fear of being ostracized, for fear of maybe even being killed. So we decided, hey, we're going to live this way, and we're just we can't, our life is too, and particularly as we've gotten more and more into technology, certainly we know that those private moments where we can have our private thoughts with our deities, with the spirits, with the ancestors, of course, are far and few now because of this invasion, if you will, of our privacy. So, all that aside, today we're talking about the Norse god Thor. And Thor, we recognize from the writings of many different individuals, particularly from the Roman era, kind of forward. We see where Thor is actually originally recognized by the Germanic tribes before they crossed the Elbe River, before we really hear about the men and women of Scandinavia, of Denmark, of Norway, of Sweden, of Finland, of Iceland, of all these places. So we really see Thor coming into his own, or coming into recognition by the peoples during the time of the migration north. These are the Celt people. The Celt people would fight for many years, would combat against the advancing Roman armies. And ultimately, in my ancestry's case, we would be pushed north into the northeastern corner of what is today Germany, before finally crossing the Elbe River into what is today the Jutland of Denmark. It was the main part of Denmark. The tribe that certainly that I come from, the Celtic Danes, these Danes would be recognized, early in their, I guess, in the years that they were being recognized. They were recognized as the Hai tribe, and these Hai tribe would obviously be a very warriorous tribe that would combat and, quite honestly, repel the Roman advance into northeastern Germany, preventing them from ultimately, Rome would never conquer the northeast corner of Germania. So a very warlike tribe, and very war-oriented, combat-oriented, very good at close-quarter combat. They were, the Hai tribe, of course, being known as the ghost warriors of history. They would combat the Roman Empire at night, striking fear, and quite honestly, kind of turning the tables on the Romans. Now, what we also see is Rome itself really kind of a much better representation of the peoples, right? Rome would, in lieu of just conquering and taking away all spiritual understandings, Rome would try to induct these many different beliefs. It was kind of more or less a spiritual hodgepodge of beliefs and understandings. Now, we know that the Rome and the Romans would conquer and destroy as many druids of the Celts that they could get their hands on, obviously, because not only were the druids very influential within their communities, but they also taught the Celtic spiritual understanding. So it was very, they were kind of the focal points of this different type of understanding. And that was the teachings of the day. My great-grandfather Tyrion was one of these druids, and he speaks very fondly of his times in the sacred groves of Western Europe, and certainly Central Europe, as they migrated north. So we see the availability, or the understandings of this evolution, starting with the Celtic and the Celtic understanding, in the Iberian Peninsula, what is today Spain, and kind of migrating up through France and into Germania, where we find many different tribes coming into being. Coming out of Gaul, of course, Gaul being the Iberian Peninsula and Western Europe there, that was all Gaul. And as these people kind of combated with or began exploring, they would wind up kind of migrating northeast to where they would ultimately arrive in Germania. Germania, again, we start seeing some different recognition of deities come to be. In this very Celt-orientated world, we see the mother goddess, of course, Danu. Danu would evolve as she moved north, becoming Freya, and some others. We also see the Dagda, and he would migrate north as well, ultimately becoming Wotan. Wotan would evolve even further as he moved further north to become recognized as Odin. Well, all of this is a wonderful understanding of the evolution of understanding of a different visibility. Now, these are not people who had access to the internet or just oodles and oodles of books and studies. Matter of fact, very few of them could probably read. Although the Druids were very versed in language and communicating, much of the stories and the teachings came by oral traditions. We would recite these stories to bring the lessons to life in a way that related to the people at which was hearing the story. Which is really why I love today communicating with my great-grandfathers, in that they can kind of retell these stories orally and give me these words and help me to understand. So a wonderful opportunity for those of you who still have your elders. They are a gift to you from the gods, and you use that wonderful, beautiful mind of our elders to gather these oral stories of times past, and we can begin to learn these lessons that have been acquired throughout the centuries. So really big thing. So as the Celts migrated north, became more different tribes, my ancestry would become a tribe referred to as the Danes. The Danes would then migrate even further north. They would cross the Elbe River and march into Denmark. The Danes, and their marching into Denmark, really is where we get the name Denmark, or Denmark, means the march of the Danes. So into Denmark we go. And of course, my ancestry would migrate all the way north in the Jutland to a town called Bjergby, about 6 kilometers short of the North Sea and 6 kilometers east of the western coast of Denmark on the North Sea. So they were kind of up there in the corner where we would essentially live, I think, like 60 generations to the late 1800s, of which my great-grandmother, the last of my family line, being born in Denmark, in Bjergby, she would migrate to the United States, where, of course, she would have my grandfather, who would have my father, who would have me. So, but as we look at these Celts and these Danes, we start seeing some different names come up. We hear the gods of justice, Tyr. We hear, of course, the god of strength, and that was Thor. Now, as that story expanded and more was revealed through teachings and understandings, about Thor, we would come to know him as many different roles. He would be the protector of Midgard. He would become quite often used as a representation of the physical strength. But you have to remember, to have physical strength, we have to have mental strength too. Many of you who may hit the gym every other morning, or maybe even every morning, for those of you dedicated, you know that to be strong, to be powerful, to be all of these things, we're going to focus some time. We're going to sit down with the exercise equipment and the weights, and we're going to do our little exercises, and we're going to exercise those muscles. We're going to build that strength, and we're going to become strong. But we've dedicated our mind. We've focused our mind on doing this task. So to be very powerful, to be almighty strong, we have to have both a physical and a mental strength. When we make a choice, a decision, whatever decision that may be in our lives, that decision we're going to stick to. We're going to not allow other influential energies to sweep us away from what our path is, whatever that may be. Now, granted, there are many times in our lives where we'll begin a path, we'll begin an understanding, and we'll be like, well, and we make the decision to alter our trajectory just a little. We make that change. That's okay. We're making the change. We're allowing this influential energy to come in and provide us with a different perspective and say, maybe that perspective is better. Maybe it's not. Maybe we say, no, I'm not going to go there. But in the case that we say that we are going to go forward, and this is our new trajectory, we're going to stick to it. We're not going to allow ourselves to be pushed and pulled away from what we want, what our desires are. Now, this brings up a great point. The point is, where do our desire to accomplish our objective, our mission, our desires end, and other people's step in? Where is that border that exists between my desires and this other person's desires? Well, that border exists in a mutually agreed upon location. Okay, as an example, in a marriage, in a team, right? You're living in a home. Your partner says, I feel like getting a dog, as an example. You have a conversation about it, and you say, yeah, okay, well, are you going to clean up after it? Or, are you going to walk it? Are you going to do all these things? Or is this something that you're trying to put on me, right? And I don't want any more responsibility. I don't want any more to do, and you have a conversation. You express your desires, they express their desires, and you reach a compromise, right? That is the same thing that we should do with our lives. If we find ourselves in our attempt to achieve our desires, we step into someone else's space. As an example, we want to vocalize our displeasure with maybe a governmental decision. We're free to do that. Well, here in the United States we are anyway, and we're free to do that. But where does that cross the line? It crosses the line if I have to, firstly and foremost, I browbeat someone else into believing what I'm saying, or B, my actions impede other people's quest for their desires, for happiness, for their comfort, for their joy. Yes, the things I may be saying when I'm I'm being discouraged. I'm vocalizing about my displeasure with this political decision in my community. I'm expressing my outrage, and another person comes into the local area where I'm producing energy, and they don't want to hear this. Well, just keep walking, my friend. Deny my energy that I'm putting out and continue your quest towards wherever you're going, right? So, but if your space and my space are in the same general area, and I'm vocalizing the displeasure and you're vocalizing the pleasure of this thing, and we're in conflict with one another, we can communicate and say, I feel what you feel, and you feel what I feel. We sympathize with each other, but we just have opposing views. And the opposing views is what makes this so wonderful, is that we can have these different perspectives. Neither of us are wrong, because in our world, in our perspective, we see it our way. We may listen to their arguments and their debate points and go, yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe for the better of all the community, maybe this thing works. I don't know, right? So thinking about being open, but yet being willing to hold our ground as well and say, no, I see your point, and that it is a great point, and I really appreciate your point, but here's my point. And for me, for my understanding, this is what works. So it's a matter of communication. It's a matter of conveying our energies back and forth to allow this compromise and these understandings to occur. It doesn't mean that we're going to agree on everything, right? It simply means that we're willing to recognize and appreciate this other human being's perspective, this other life form's perspective, and appreciate it. That's it. We don't have to subscribe to it. All we are doing is simply appreciating it. Strength of mind is a very powerful piece for you to be able to work yourself out of depression or anxiety. And when we focus on going the direction that we want to go, and when we are in charge, when we're leading and we're making the decisions, this is really what there is to the strength of your mind. And all of us have it. We simply have to employ it. So use your strength to your benefit. All right. Well, today we celebrate the Norse god Thor. For those of you who need to hit the gym, by all means, feel free to do so. But for the rest of us, when we're talking about Thor, we're also talking about the mental strength of not letting yourself being pushed away from those things that you desire, and that you're willing to communicate to reach a compromise with others around us. All right. So ponder that as we enjoy the rest of Thor's Day today. I wish you the very best, and we'll see you again tomorrow morning when we'll talk about the magic and the energy transference of the great Norse goddess Freya. And of course, one of my favorite of all the gods and goddesses. She brings a wealth of understanding of managing our energy to maintain our mental space. So really love Freya. All right, my friends, I wish you the very best of Thor's Day, love and light, and again, we will see you bright and early tomorrow, Alaska time, where we'll talk about Freya.